Hi, this is Misha, and we are back with the Brownells BR-10A, and this is a copy, a clone, an inspiration from the original Armalite Sudanese pattern AR10 from the mid-late 50s. Now, we did an intro video on this guy, and I have to do kind of a quick call out in the beginning. The reason I knew about this gun so early on last year, I think it was around December, was Chris Bartocci actually called me after immediately seeing it, and he was like a kid. You know, he was really excited. You know, Chris, he loves ARs, but and he's got plenty of 308s, but he likes the retros, as do I, and probably most of you. And he was just really tickled to see what Brownells was at that time working on, and that was a prototype. It had some differences from the final production version you see here. But yeah, he told me about it, so when I could, and about a month later, I put in a pre-order, and then really hadn't heard anything, had kind of forgotten about it, and he called me saying they finally had it done and they were shipping them, and I felt kind of bad because I got mine before he got his, but luckily he got his about a week later, so he got to shoot it. And then, even though we had the preliminary video out, he got to do a really great, extensive, long shooting and history vid, so definitely check out Chris Bartocci for that. And I will freely admit I am not an expert on the AR10. I wish I could be, but for me, being blind, it's hard for me to know things until I can hold them. Pictures don't do me a heck of a lot of good, and you can't really hold a lot of originals. There were a few kits and floating around in various conditions and stuff, but you know, there's tons of variations in these guns. So I really am not that versed in the details like I would be with like a retro AR-15 M16. When we did our first introductory video, I said I was pretty happy with this. I pointed out some things that weren't really right with it, things that were inaccurate, things that were a bit of a modernization. However, as time has gone on, I've really started to appreciate this even more, and I think now, after about a month of thinking on it and looking at the gun, Brownells did about the best possible job they could have done without making this a, $3,000 totally custom critter, and I'll explain why. Now, I'm not going to go too much into the history of the AR-10. We do have a video, I'm not sure if it's out yet, probably not when this one's coming, where we kind of look at the West German field trials of 58 and 59, and we compare this gun to the original G1 FAL, an early G3, and we compare it to the Swiss SIG SG510. All four guns, including the AR-10, were serious contenders in the West German trials, so there's a lot of history there. I will say that Armalite, while they designed this, and while Eugene Stoner designed it, really didn't manufacture more than a handful. I think it was fewer than 50 at Custom Mesa, California. This was licensed out to a company, we'll just call AI because I don't speak Dutch. And they were going to manufacture these, and they would improve the design, so on and so forth. But this only lasted till, I believe, 61. It was the early 60s, and then politics played a role, and that production line got shut down. So even parties, for example, the Portuguese military that were very interested in this, only ended up getting a few, as did Sudan. Cuba got some. There is quite a list. It was sparking a lot of interest, but they were, the manufacturer just wasn't big and was not reliable. So unfortunately, this gun really had its potential cut short because neither Armalite or AI really could do it justice and service it the way a major military would want. That said, it really pioneered the way. It fired 7.62 NATO, of course, 308 Win. I know there's a difference, but we use them very interchangeably. And it's basically, the original was just a large AR-10, or to be AR-15, or to be fair, an AR-15 is a scaled down AR-10. The original gun had a 20-inch barrel. They went through several different types of muzzle devices. Early on, they did the open 3-prong style here. Later they would go to kind of a closed style. Original guns would usually have a facility for launching 22mm standard NATO rifle grenades. This one does not. And to that end, they would have an adjustable gas system. They went through a few different stylings. They would also go through a few different stylings of handguard. Early guns would have kind of brown Bakelite furniture. Not identical to this because this is repro, but this is a decent approximation, frankly, guys. They would have this basic shape. Later, they would go to black. Now, original guns would have a gray finish, kind of what we would call Colt or XM gray. This one obviously is black, but that's one of my nitpicks we'll get to in a little bit. We do have, these are stiff, guys, especially when brand new. They do work out a bit. We have a chromed bolt carrier group in this, and they did a pretty darn good job at Brownells on this bolt group. One early thing, they originally were only going to have one gas relief hole here. Not only would this not be accurate, it would not always be the safest. I mean, these holes are here to regulate the gas because we have the direct impingement, or really truly semi-direct impingement because the piston's on top of the carrier. But they did go to 3 holes, which is great for several reasons. And I think they did a pretty bang-up job of making a reproduction carrier while still making it compatible with more modern DPMS type parts, which is, you know, nice for replacing things like firing pins and extractors. As you saw, we do have the trigger style cocking handle. It is, like I said, stiff. That's just because it has a detent in the back. I'll pull it back here. Bolt hole open works very well. Back here we have this little spring. It's a round spring that holds it into the receiver. Nice and secure. It's not going to go flying off, but it is very stiff on initial unlock. Between this spring and just unlocking at the front and then pushing open your dust cover, you're doing a lot of things all at once. And again, this is still a very new gun, even though we've now fired it a bit. I'm hoping after a few hundred rounds this loosens up. This is a little stiffer than the original because the originals had a little bit more complicated system in the back. Instead of just having a spring, it actually had like a ball bearing detent system. Now this was on the early AR10s. They had this type. They would stick out the back. It's just the detent was different. Later with the so-called Portuguese models, they would actually kind of go to a telescoping style of handle. It was still the trigger type, but it actually telescoped up here and didn't stick out the back, so that's kind of neat. We have a typical style release. Slab side, obviously no brass deflector or forward assist. Uses a pretty typical buffer. Now this uses a modern buffer, rifle buffer. Originally they would use kind of an early version of what we would know today as an Edgewater. Yes, it would have been neat if they did a replica Edgewater buffer. However, 2 things. Adding cost, of course, making one more custom part. And 2, the Edgewater buffers really were flawed. They were too lightweight, too high of a cyclic rate, so on and so forth. So for just safety factor and all that, and keeping a little more weight in the back here, I understand why they use the modern buffer. But an Edgewater would have been neat, I agree. They also put kind of patterning, ribbing on the takedown pins, reminiscent of the original. And they did a pretty good job of approximating the original bolt release. It's not identical, but it looks the part. Same with the safety. It has the small hole in it, early style. That's nice. It's kind of a blockier safety. And it's for the mags. Right now, these are shipping with Brownells SR25 DPMS compatible 20 round metal mags. They look pretty good. The original guns would have had a waffle mag, and I think we're all hoping that they will do a replica waffle mag for this eventually, kind of like Nodex Bud did for the AR-15. but right now they don't, unfortunately. The good news is these mags are quite inexpensive. One is about 20 bucks new, or if you buy a bulk pack, you can get them for about 10 bucks. So I'm not going to complain. That's good because these can't take Magpul PMags. Mostly it's because of the front. The extra material on the PMag just won't work with this magwell because this is an original style magwell. You probably could Dremel a PMag to fit, but honestly, why? This is the kind of gun I'm in the camp that you're not going to pay the money for a retro gun like this and then put a very modern mag in it. But I bet PMags could be Dremeled to fit, but I would definitely modify the mag, not the gun. But with the Brownells mags being quite reliable and inexpensive, and the, DPMS mags, metal ones, will work in this too, as well as the SR25s. Yeah, I just try to angle that way. Not everything has to be Magpul compatible, does it, folks? If so, this is probably not the gun you're looking at. Unfortunately, original Armalite AR10 waffle mags won't fit without at least modification. I know Chris tried his, and he had it wouldn't quite line up with the bolt release and things. Could it be tweaked to work? Maybe. I don't know. I don't have it here. But as it stands right now, original waffles won't work, folks. That's a little unfortunate. Okay, so range time. Held open. Blind recording. Okay. Steady cam.
Click.
Click. Were you fully suited?
Yep. Was with Wolf. Clear.
Have some stripe.
Yep. He was around halfway in there. Just dropped out. It was a live round.
Okay. There we go.
The 2 hitches out of what, 30 rounds?
Yeah. As you saw in the clips, it was raining. Big fat drops. Sizzling on the barrel. So we didn't get a lot of range time. So we probably put 40 or 50 rounds through this. And we had 2 failures. Not bad, I would say, considering this is brand spanking new. Hasn't been broken in. I did wipe the bolt group off and the internals off because this thing was very heavily greased, but I didn't like chemically degrease it and stuff, so that could have a part to play. One of the failures was with bare ammo that Jay was shooting. You saw there. I think it was silver, it might have been brown, so steel case. The good news is the other steel case he fired through it, I think about 20 in total, ran fine. So 1 out of 20 on steel on a brand new gun. I was shooting PPU brass case, and the first mag I put through it, flawless. And then Jay shot it, and then I put another mag through it, and we had a light malfunction, as you saw in the vid. It looked to have either been from under-gassing or maybe a mag issue. Again, these mags are brand new. I brought 6 of them out, so we were trying different mags. So I'm not going to rule out a mag problem or just maybe a lightly loaded round or one of those flukes that a new gun has. So far, reliability is well into the 90%, and keeping in mind one of the 2 failures was steel anyway. We find it's quite reliable, but we will definitely shoot more, and we're hoping to see pretty much perfect reliability after a couple of 100 rounds. Also, when we kind of mark the mags and make sure all the mags are good to go. Accuracy we really couldn't test because again we were at the short range, so it was just at a few dozen yards. So we'll have to get to the rifle range when it's not raining and do that, guys. Apologies, but we wanted to at least get some shooting for you. As far as how it shot, Jay and I both were very happy. You hear a lot about the recoil on these. We didn't find it bad. I mean, yeah, it's a 7.62 NATO. It's a very lightweight gun. I mean, this gun is about 9 pounds, which is quite light for what it is. But the recoil impulse was very straight back. You know, it's an inline, so you have from here to here all the way back into your shoulder. It didn't have a lot of tendency to flip or try to climb or twist. And going into your shoulder, it was very pleasant. I honestly thought it was a lot of fun. I was expecting much more because I've fired AR-10s in the past, and this was seemed a lot nicer, frankly. I really liked how it fired. To be fair, the bolt is very smooth. The trigger is very good. It's a mil-spec, but definitely on the nicer end of mil-spec. Upward to lower fitment is very nice. The pins aren't so tight you can't push them out, nothing like that. But there's really no play. Handguards fit nice with just the typical little bit of twist you expect on a rifle. Stock lines up nicely. Flash shutter's timed a little wonky. I might try to twist it just a bit. It's fine. It's a 3-prong, so they just kind of screw around how they do. But it's a little kind of odd angled. That's just how it came in. Gas block is nice and tight. Some of the early ones had a little bit of wiggle on these because of, you know, this being a brand new part. But yeah, we were pretty pleasantly surprised, even though it was a limited range day. But we were definitely excited to put more rounds through this. And this is the first AR-10 of any type I've ever owned. I was kind of saving myself for the right one to come along. A few years ago, probably 15 or 20 now, Armalite Incorporated under Eagle Arms did a Sudanese AR-10 replica. But, and I'm not saying it was a bad gun. The Armalite guns are good. A friend has several and he's a big fan. But while it had the 20-inch barrel and it had kind of the Bakelite brownie looking furniture and it had the top cocking, that's about all it had. For one, it was made during the assault weapons ban, so it didn't get to have a lot of evil features. And it was mostly just a modern Armalite AR-10, which is really just an upscaled AR-15. So those guns they look the part a bit, but very clearly an inspiration. The Brownells is much closer. So some things that they did that Armalite didn't. Again, we have the 3-prong flash hider. This is something they made specially for this gun. We have a pretty medium light profile barrel out to here, which is good. Then it's fluted under the handguards to further save on weight. Some of the early AI guns were also fluted. The gas block is really impressive. One of the things that people complained about when they first saw these at SHOT Show this year, January 2018, was the gas block. On the prototype, they just had a standard AR-15 type gas block. A lot of people didn't like this. It just didn't look right. So one of the reasons this Brownells BR-10 was a little late in coming out is they made their own gas block. Now it's not identical to original, but it is a lot closer. It's more narrow. It has a more authentic style front sight. If you can see in there, kind of a blade type. It's fixed to the base. It's not really adjustable. It's smooth on the bottom. Side sling mount. It just much more looks the part. So this was a part they had to make for this. Equally, some of the prototypes had regular AR handguards. This actually has a pretty good approximation of Sudanese. Now these are standard 2/2 AR-15 style. They have a slip ring in the back, cap in the front. That is a round cap, not a triangle, so that's good. It matches up with the handguards. But they did a nice compromise here with the handguards. They look quite original with vent holes, but they're also interchangeable with standard DPMS or AR-15 A2 type handguards in case either you break these or you just want to go to black furniture or whatever. Heck, you might even want to put a rail or M-lock or whatever. So that's pretty nice, I would say, in my opinion. The rest of the furniture I'm not as happy with, but it's not a deal killer. The pistol grip is in a decent color to match, but it's just an A1 style. I'm really hoping Brownells does come out with a replica AR10 Sudanese pattern. I know for a fact they have a couple of them there to use as measurements and prototypes, so I'm hoping they do it. And the nice thing is, this would be something if this part came out. Brownells sells parts very freely. I'm sure they would sell it on their website. We could buy it, put it on. I mean, it's one screw. So come on, Brownells, make us an AR10 pistol grip, okay? That would be really neat, and it probably wouldn't cost a heck of a lot. And I bet people would be willing to pay a couple of bucks for one. Yeah, it would just look nice, especially with these hand guards, because they're so decently close. Likewise, the buttstock is okay. It is early AR-15 style with the non-trap door ribbing, rotatable sling swivel, rubber coated. This is an E1 type. It's good. I mean, it doesn't bug me as much as the pistol grip. If they really felt like it, they could do an AR-10 style stock, but you know, this wouldn't bug me too much if it stayed on. But if they did come out with an AR-10 closer replica, I would definitely buy it. This does take standard rifle buttstocks, so you can switch it out too. And the buffer inside is pretty well standard. Yeah. The upper and lower were custom made. These are billet. Pretty darn close to original. Not exactly, of course, but using modern manufacturing techniques, we have a pretty close approximation of the magwell. Very slab side. No extra ribbing or anything. Upper is the same way. The rear sight is close to original. It's an A2 type rear sight, but it is adjustable like the original. For elevation, for windage, you have to use a tool, which is pretty authentic. The charging handle we already talked about. So to close out with, why I'm getting happier with this gun than and I wasn't unhappy when I first got it, but I'm like a lot of people, I could point out and go, that's not really authentic. Now, one thing I really think they should do, and I think in the future they might do it, is go to a gray finish. It doesn't bug me too much in reality because I can't see it, but in principle I know it's black, and you know, worst case though, you can refinish a gun. That's something I hope they do correct. But a lot of other things, there's not much they could do about. If you went to a more authentic, more original style like fire control group and all that stuff, you would lose your parts compatibility with DPMS and other modern things, and we don't want to lose that. Much like I said with the buffer, it would add cost to an already expensive gun, and it would mean if a part broke in the future, I mean, let's be honest, Brownells might make these for 20 years. Probably not, honestly, but they could. But eventually they're going to quit making them, and time goes by, and hopefully these are still running 50 years from now like SP1s are for us today. We want to be able to replace springs, pins, even the hammer, the trigger, whatever in the future, so keeping that cross compatibility is a good thing. So the internals you can still swap out if they break, or if you just feel like it, with modern AR-10 308 type parts. I think this is a good decision, both economically and just from a practical standpoint, because you know the deal, whenever a special gun comes out, people always ask, what about spare parts? That's a major concern today. So this gun's pretty much got you covered. If you can't find spare AR-10, AR-15 parts in a lot of instances, yeah, you got problems. And this is using some of the most common parts in the whole USA. So yeah, I don't blame them at all. Any other thoughts? Let me think about thoughts. Not really. This is pretty much living up to exactly what I would hope for. Price, you know, it'd be nice if it was a little cheaper, but I think these days in the AR-15 market, we've become spoiled by all the $500-600 guns. We have to remember that going back 10 or 20 years, AR-15s were $1,000 plus guns, and AR-10s were $1,500 plus guns. It's only in recent years that a lot of the M forgeries and stuff have become so inexpensive because of the glut in the market. This isn't a glut gun. This is already a 308, which is not as cheap as a 223, and it's a custom replica retro gun, which have always been more expensive. Just look at some of the old Fulton offerings and the Nodak receivers. I mean, yeah, you can get a regular generic AR lower for 30-40 bucks, but if you want a quality Nodak or Brownells retro lower, they've always been 150 bucks. So the retro stuff has always been pricier. And to be fair, this isn't something you're likely to buy for self-defense or to be a truck gun. You're going to buy this because you're a retro fan, a collector, maybe an Armalite or a Eugene Stoner fan. You want something to kind of hang on the wall to approximate a gun that really led a revolution in guns, because the AR-10, while not terribly successful, not that many were ever really made, obviously it led to the AR-15. And good grief, not only has the AR-15 been made in the millions and adopted by, you know, dozens of militaries, hundreds of police departments, on and on and on, it spurred a revolution in firearms. After the Colt and the 223 cartridge appeared in Vietnam, it inspired other manufacturers to chamber all new guns, lighter weight, smaller guns to be firing it. For example, the HK-33. The FNCAL, the SIG SG540, and eventually SG550, the French FAMAS bullpup, the Austrian Steyr AUG bullpup. On and on and on the list goes. Beretta and all these other major got on board. So this was really all where it began, because if you look before this, yeah, a few of the principles like the rotating bolt appeared in the Johnson 1941. Direct impingement actually dates back to France. They used it considerably, really going all the way back to the early 20th century. But the Armalite was the first to put these together and to use modern manufacturing techniques, alloy receivers instead of steel, polymer, originally Bakelite, of course, furniture instead of wood. And this is really thanks to Armalite being a subsidiary of Fairchild, an aircraft manufacturer, so they had access to the cutting-edge technology that was basically a combination of lightweight and strength. So this was really the first to come in this package, and it has still a very modern silhouette. Pistol grip, straight-in detachable mag, not a terribly long barrel, flash hider, iron sights, of course, which are kind of gone away now, but you know, for standard for a long time in this pattern. So it really led the revolution. So if you are a collector of kind of that history and you can't find or afford one of the few parts kits that came in during the 80s, Portuguese or Sudanese, not to mention finding a lower for them, hey, the 1600-ish that these cost is a lot better. Plus, a lot of the parts kits were well worn, still serviceable, but well worn. This is a brand new gun with warranty, so there is that. And again, it does take common parts, so you can actually go out and shoot the crap out of it, which is what I would do and plan to do, because what's the point of owning something if you don't actually enjoy having it, right? I mean, like I said, I was pleasantly surprised how this fired. And it really does have a decent trigger. Alrighty, folks. Well, we're going to have more on this gun. Different ways, different history vids, and of course more shooting. So definitely check back. And if you like retro guns, we have quite a few on the AR-15, early M16 in the playlist. So check those out if you like. And if you want to support the channel, please click on the link to our Patreon page. As always, this is Misha. And we will catch you next time.